Okay, thank you so much for being here. So, my name is Jessica Halsey. I'm a senior English major at Tuskegee University, and I'm helping to write a grant provided by the National Association of Black Journalists, which aims to illuminate the impact of the pandemic on Macon County. And as I understand, you are the principal at Tuskegee Institute Middle School. So, I was hoping to give a little bit of information and talk about how COVID has impacted your school. So, that is my first question. How would you describe the overall impact of COVID-19 on your school?
All right. Actually, I'm the assistant principal at Tuskegee Institute Middle School, but I
Okay, thank
would I would describe the overall impact of COVID on my school. I mean, there's several impacts. We have to look at it from a standpoint of um, so far as attendance was affected by COVID, because now there are a lot of parents who are choosing the virtual option as opposed to in person, which I totally understand. You know, it's each parent's choice. Some parents feel more comfortable with their students being at home.
you.
It has affected us so far as I guess being comfortable, so far as students being comfortable with each other, because now you have to wear masks. Students aren't as free to have to socially distance from each other. And that is like two things that two ways that we've been affected mostly.
Thank you so much about that. And you talked about the students, so I'm wondering maybe about the teacher and the staff. So, what were some of the issues COVID related created as it relates to your teachers and the staff?
Well, in the early days of COVID, our staff had to learn new ways of reaching the students, because at one point in time we were strictly virtual. We were virtual. Students were going to school at home, and the teachers had to use the computer and set up. We used a program called Google Classroom, where the teachers would be able to see the students, such as I'm seeing you, and they would have lessons with their students, but the teachers would be at school and the students would be at their particular house or off campus. So teachers had to learn a new way to provide instruction to students. It was a quick learning curve, but our teachers, they made the adjustment to reach the students.
And speaking of that, do you think there was some sort of distance maybe because of distant learning? How did that create the atmosphere underneath this pandemic?
Um, the distance that was derived as a result of the pandemic, just having that in class, in person instruction, not being able to, have breakout groups where you could talk to the student one on one. I mean, there's nothing like old school in person learning,
Mm.
because you're having that one on one or having that in person feel. But because of safety reasons, early on during the pandemic, we had to go virtual. But so that was a kind of, I guess you could say, catch 22, so to speak. But like I said, once again, our teachers they took the time. They set up special breakout rooms where they could have one-on-one sessions with the students, email the students, talk to the students on the phone, everything that we could do to possibly make the students feel comfortable through this transition, and try to make sure that they did not have that much learning loss.
Yes, I definitely understand that. And with this, having to quarantine and isolate, how difficult was it to maintain compliance with staff absent due to having to, leave school because of COVID, catching it, things like that?
Well, we really did not have a large turnover so far as staff members catching COVID, so to speak. Because as you know, during this time period, the flu is rampant and things of that nature. So every year, you always have a situation where you have there are going to be absences due to, like I said, common cold, flu-like symptoms, and things of that nature. But with COVID, it was extra precautions that had to be taken, because at the end of the day, it's all about the safety of the students and the safety and cleanliness of the school. So a lot of precautions were put in place to make sure that everyone was comfortable and everyone was safe.
That's good that not a lot of people caught it and it didn't, disturb the learning there. And with that being said, then what do you think, or what do you perceive were the greatest challenges to helping students adapt to remote learning?
Well, to make sure I understand your question about the adaptation, are we still referring to virtual or as students matriculated back into the in-classroom or in-person setting?
Yes, thank you for that. Right now, just remote learning. So during the height of the pandemic.
Okay, well, during the height of the pandemic, like I said, having that one-on-one in-person learning, nothing beats it. I mean, but with technology blessed us, and we were fortunate enough to have the means to provide our students with that extra help and that not in person, but to have that have that digital component to help bridge the gap. We had students, as you know, we're in a rural area, so students were provided with, their parents were provided with Wi-Fi systems, which is like a little mini Wi-Fi, so to speak, that they can have in their homes. There were situations where the buses were outfitted with Wi-Fi, and they would go in communities to help students to be able to connect to the Wi-Fi. And connectability was one of our major issues, but we were able to kind of we were able to work that situation out to make it where students were able to log into the internet, able to, receive their assignments, able to connect and stay connected with their teachers.
That's awesome. And with that being said, when the students eventually did return, what were new disciplinary issues that you faced in student behavior?
Well, with anything, when students they have to get acclimated back to school rules when you're, because for instance, Jessica, when you're in your own home and you're having class in your pajamas, or you're like I say, you're at home, but having to come to school, follow rules, walking on the right side of the hall, having your shirt tucked in, just normal school rules. And also, we have a mask mandate to keep our students safe as well. So, getting the students, hey, you have to wear your mask, you have to keep your mouth and nose covered. Just staying, I think the biggest way to help alleviate those type of problems, you have to stay in touch with the parents. And that's one thing that we do. We contact our parents. We stay in tune with our parents. We use email. We have telephone calls and other types of tools that we reach out to our parents to keep them involved.
That is great. And my next question is, what was it like to pivot each time the CDC or maybe state policies for COVID mitigation changed?
Well, that is a great question, and I'm glad you asked. And one thing about education, if you're an educator, you have to be fluid. You have to be flexible because an education is always changing. The way people learned 10 years ago is different than the way people learn now. I mean, the way people learned 5 years ago is totally different than the way people learn now. So you have to be fluid, you have to be flexible, and we just whatever the CDC said, whatever our lead nurse or the health department would come and tell us, we just we bought in. First of all, you have to buy in. We bought into what they were telling us, and we just made sure that we were in compliance, and we had our faculty, staff, and students in compliance to make sure that we could keep everyone safe.
Yeah, and that's really good. And with, transitioning back into being in person, and actually, are you guys fully in person now, or is it still, maybe a little bit hybrid?
Actually, we are fully in person now.
Okay,
We are 100% in person.
that's great. And I guess before you were fully in person, how did the students respond to having limited interactions and activities?
Well, before we were fully in person, we did move from virtual to a hybrid component where you had some students still at home, and then you had students, small groups of students who matriculated back into the in-person setting. So, it gave those students an opportunity to kind of, have that one-on-one in-person learning. But, as time moved on more and things opened back up, students, we had to encourage our students or let our students know, hey, we're going to do the best we can to make sure we keep you safe. And that is the biggest thing and the biggest concern because students are our greatest resource. They're like our clients, and we want to make sure that they're safe and that they have a great nurturing environment to learn in.
Yes, you are definitely right about the importance of kids and the students. So I'm wondering about even the staff and what changes did you see in the overall mental and emotional health of staff, but also the students?
Well, the staff members were elated to have students back in the classroom because if you're accustomed to being around students, it's nothing like I said, it's nothing like that in-person, one-on-one contact. And once we understood the ramifications and what we were working on and working towards, and we understood more about the virus as information was disseminated to us, then we were able to make better decisions and come up with plans to make sure that the students were safe, the faculty was safe, and to make sure that everyone would be able to learn and thrive in the environment. We had, when students first started matriculating back, we had barriers between the students and the teacher to make each person feel comfortable. Each student was we provided students with masks, face shields, things of that nature. Teachers were provided with the same thing so that they could feel comfortable in that learning environment.
Yeah, and that's great. And that leads me to my last question. Now that you're in person and we seem to be getting more accustomed to living in a post-pandemic world, what measures have been put in place to help your school move on from a COVID footing?
Okay. The measures that have been put in place to help our students to move on from COVID. Well, I mean, one thing about it, we have to remind our students, faculty, and staff on a daily basis COVID is not over. Although we understand it a little bit better, but with the different variants coming out, the transitions, the changes, you still have to we still have to be fluid. We still have to move. We still have to listen to what the science says, and to prepare ourselves. So as we move back and when we move forward and we progress, so to speak, we are just like I said, making sure that we keep up and stay abreast of the changing trends that go along with this particular virus so that we can keep everyone safe. Whether it's, like I said, hand sanitizers, we're making sure that the rooms are thoroughly cleaned, making sure things are sanitized, providing masks, social distancing, things of that nature.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Jackson, for all the information you've given us today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, Jessica.